And we're like, okay, we see where this is going. Like, that's when we decided, like, should we call 911? Like, I've never called 911 before. What do we do here?
The rope is free!
What?
The rope is free!
Ah, shit!
Liam's fallen into a crevasse, and I immediately thought he was dead, or at least seriously hurt.
And my guts had been ripped out of my body and were being contained by my flight suit.
I know a mountain lion is on top of me.
Welcome to episode number 6 of the Wildertainment podcast. I'm your host, Vince, former graduate from Helicopter Rescue Swimmer School. Today we have somebody that also attended Helicopter Rescue Swimmer School with me. It's really cool to have basically my best friend on the podcast so you guys can really get a sneak peek into my successes and my failures in the rescue swimmer program because he was there with me throughout that hardship. But that's not quite what we're talking about today. His Wildertainment adventure is a 120-mile canoe race in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So as well as talking about rescue swimmer school, we talk about this just brutal endeavor, which is canoeing. And canoeing is one of those sports that's totally underrated. If you've ever been in a canoe in a river, you understand how easily these things tip over, how sketchy and how much dedication it takes to really finessing these watercrafts successfully, and let alone on a 120-mile long race. So you're going to get the understanding of how to operate a canoe and the challenges that go into training for this. No one knows how to operate a canoe unless you know. The majority of folks we're going to talk about today don't know shit about how to paddle a canoe. So you're going to learn a little bit about that today, as well as we talk about just the mindset behind succeeding in athletic achievements such as canoe racing, also powerlifting, because this guest is a successful power lifter as well, and a marathon runner. So on top of that, we talk about my achievements in rock climbing. We talk about the imposter effect when you're about to achieve something incredible and you feel like you're not worthy of success in that realm. So tune in as we dissect canoeing, rescue swimmer school near the end there, and basically just a mindset that's going to get you through any type of athletic achievement with my good friend, best friend, Ryan Foguth. Before we move on, please go on Apple Podcasts and leave a rating review of the Wildertainment podcast. This show will no longer be hosted on the Rescue Swimmer Mindset podcast in approximately a month. So we're going to remove it from that platform. If you've been a fan, subscribe to the Wildertainment podcast so you don't miss out. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. This episode is on YouTube. So check it out there. Again, Ryan Foguth, 120-mile canoe race. Ryan Foguth, it's good to have a good and close friend on the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Anytime, man.
To many more to come, hopefully.
Yeah.
How's New Jersey? How's So hold on, let's give you a little background of
rewind. Yeah.
Let's rewind to back in the 90s when we met in Coast Guard Helicopter Rescue Swimmer School. No, what year was that? 2012?
That was 2014. No, 2013.
2013. Yeah.
Yeah. Fall
2013. Yeah. We met in Helicopter Rescue Swimmer School, and now you are still in the Coast Guard, but currently training the rescue swimmers that want to attend Helicopter Rescue Swimmer School, but through the NEX program. Is that what you're doing?
NEX.
I always say
NEX.
Yeah, I always say NEX.
Why do you say that, man?
I don't know. It just sounds cute. NEX.
Thanks. I mean, NXX is just a word. It's just a document. So anyone could have an NXX. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a rescue swimmer. It's just what's on the document. But we all been calling them NXX candidates.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm an instructor there. So my primary job is to recruits. But right now that's on freeze because of COVID. So we don't know really what's going on this week.
What do you do specifically in Coast Guard Bootcamp with the recruits?
Initial PF tests. Remember when you came through? You had to do push-ups, sit-ups, run.
Yeah, barely.
Do you remember that at all?
Yeah.
Barely, yeah. Hey, I mean, everyone comes to the gym, and then the gym instructors, that's what I am. We give them their first PF test, pretty much. Workout classes throughout training, swim assessments, And that's about it.
A
Yeah.
lot.
We handle all the gym classes.
What's the current inflow of candidates attending boot camp? Are they pretty squared away or kind of donkeys across the board?
I'd say it's probably the same as it's always been for you. I mean, how many people did you go to boot camp with?
I don't know. I want to say is it 80s? Is that potentially possible?
Yeah, that's that's pretty much average.
Yeah,
It's every company.
company. One X-ray 186 reporting for duty.
186. Dang, we're almost on 200s.
Oh, okay. So the 200s, 200 companies.
Like 200. Like you have to go through that whole alphabet, obviously.
Oh, right. So I was X-ray 186. So it's like a new alphabet up to 200 now, right? If that makes any sense, if I explain that right. So like it
Correct.
goes ABC
Almost.
through Z, and then you get a number, and then it starts the new number and the new alphabet. So
Yeah.
So you're saying they're almost at 200 times with 26 letters. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's
Yeah,
cool.
we're getting there.
Hey,
I'm
one
what would
question.
it be?
Is ramp still around where recruits walk around and every left step on their march they go ramp, ramp, ramp?
It's something like that. It's called something else now.
What's it called?
But yeah, they still have, I don't know what it's called now. What the heck do they call it? It's some kind of like attitude enhancement kind of like program now, but they don't refer to it as ramp.
So
But they still march around with like heaving lines and saying like Coast Guard core values and whatnot.
so does every left step, like instead of saying ramp, do they go attitude enhancement? Attitude enhancement.
No,
Okay,
no,
yeah.
definitely not. It's more like Coast Guard.
Yeah. And
But yeah, I haven't heard that going on for a while though, because COVID's changed everything. So I mean, we're kind of trying to isolate. Every department's isolating, and you only see the recruits when they come to your department, kind of thing.
gotcha. And what specific things have changed as far as like how the boot camp is structured?
It's just you show up and you have to ROM. It's called restriction on movement, and the recruits stay in there for 2 weeks, isolated, in their basically own rack, in the squad bay, and then they have to go through several tests of COVID, testing negative before they can actually form.
Interesting.
And then you form into actual boot camp. So
And like throughout that, what is it, 2-month process, are they wearing masks the entire time kind of thing or what?
yes, I forgot that too. Yeah, they're wearing masks the entire time. It'd be a strange time to go through boot camp. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, like
But that's across the board for everyone in the,
Yeah, I
in the
hear.
country. Yeah.
well, here's a question though. Like I know that recruits usually take showers together. Are they taking showers with masks on, or there's a new system of showers?
No, it's obviously separated. During ROM, you're not showering as a group now. This is like the ROM thing for the 2 weeks quarantine. Everything's isolated. Like you're going to the bathroom by yourself.
Okay, but I'm saying like
Yeah,
once
you
you're
don't-
in that boot camp, do you?
Then it's assumed that now you have this body of people. They're all negative, so they can all train together. And then all of us instructors on the outside, everyone's wearing a mask. Everyone's maintaining huge social distancing.
Yeah, I hear you. One thing I recall, like in boot camp, people getting their wisdom teeth out, which seemed like the worst time to get your wisdom teeth out in the world, but it's free.
Yeah.
So like, I would call it like chipmunk basic training because like for a 2-week period, people have just like big jowls, like in pain. And I don't even know how they're yelling through that. Is that been cut back? Is there no more surgeries to get your wisdom teeth out in boot camp?
No, you're right though. They stopped doing that for a bit. And then you would have to do it after you graduated. They might have started that back again. I'm not sure where that's at, but that definitely, everything kind of slowed up. Everything changed drastically. Yeah.
You liking it?
It'd be different. Yeah. Love it.
Right
Love
on.
I mean, for instructors, our job's never really stopped. Like there's still recruits training. There always will be, whether there's COVID or not. It's just a different protocol now.
Yeah. I saw a cool Coast Guard video of you, training the recruits and having them jump in the pool. Most people that join the Coast Guard aren't attempting to become helicopter rescue swimmers. I think a lot of civilians don't understand that concept. They think everyone in the Coast Guard is Kevin Costner from The Guardian. So it was kind of cool seeing that video of you training them and them getting in the water and slightly some of them seeming like they're in that survival mode of like, get across the pool, like Jesus,
Yeah.
get me out of here.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people can't swim
in the
join
Coast
the
Guard.
Coast Guard. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
fishermen, like lobster fishermen, I think on average, like I don't want to speak ill of the fishermen, but I know my family's a bunch of lobster fishermen, and they like a lot of them don't swim very well. They kind of have the mentality of the boat better not sink. It makes me a better sailor because that boat better not sink, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we hear that commonly, like among people from Hawaii. It's like, you were born on a island. How can you not swim? You know, a lot of people come from there and they can't swim.
Yeah.
You never know.
You should have that backup. Yeah, we'll get into your pretty epic 120-mile canoe race in a second here. But yeah, let's just to build a little rapport as to how we know each other. We attended helicopter rescue swimmer school together in 2013. One thing I remember, like some of my best friends in the world, even today, are folks that at first I just didn't really like that much. I was like, fuck this guy, you know?
Yeah, everyone thought that about you. Come on.
I'm hurt. Cut. New podcast. We're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recall like our personalities being very opposite. You were that very squared away a sailor that was always ready to roll at like 4 a.m. even though I think our start time was like 5 or something. You're just there with your pack on, just. Oh
yeah, I did get up early. Yeah, it was kind of like ready. Let's get this day started. Maybe it was more anxiety than preparedness. I don't know.
Yeah, you were so you were totally anticipating like, all right, come on. And we were like, dude, we have 45 minutes. You're like, I know, we're late though. Come on, 45 minutes early is late. This is the military. And we're like, dude, it's 15 minutes early. You're late.
But I mean, we were polar opposites, man. You were the one that you could roll out of bed, like wrinkled hair, like eyes still cracking open. And you're just like, yeah, well, I guess class starts in 10 minutes. We'll be there. That was you for sure.
Yeah. Would you say like there was any other individuals like that were kind of more casual?
Not the most prepared or more casual. Yeah, that's what you want to call it, more casual. Oh God, I would say most of them there were kind of had like a morning routine thing.
Yeah. What about Josh?
I would say you were
wasn't he kind of shit showy?
Yeah, of course he was. But I mean, I still think he was. Yeah, you guys were similar levels. All right, but he was the only one though in that class. Yeah.
I think we had a great I've said like I think it was one of the most entertaining times in my life going through rescue swimmer school just because of that group dynamic. It was just a bunch of goofballs and yourself included / excluded in the sense that you were squared away, you were regimented, but you definitely had a sense of humor. But that said, just the antics that we would get into, and I feel like the person, the troublemaker potential like starter up person was Josh Latuka. That influenced myself as well to kind of become a riot company, going through that pipeline.
Yeah, I feel like you were way ahead of him.
Really?
Rambunctious for sure.
Why?
Oh my God. Well, first, weren't you the youngest one there?
Oh yeah,
in that group, right?
Yeah, I think I was. What is that? 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was barely 6 months into the Coast Guard or something.
Yeah. So yeah, everyone kind of thought you were like, oh, this like young punk. Like, who is this kid? And you were always sporadic, eccentric. Always wanted to go. Like, oh, let's go out and do something this weekend. And we're like, what are you talking about? No, we're resting for class Monday. Shut up. But you didn't care. You're ready to go.
Yeah. Like I would always.
And Latuka was ready to follow you or join you.
Interesting. I always remembered it like differently, like him having the rambunctious ideas. But yeah, I guess when we decided to, or maybe I decided to book it to, was it Virginia in the mountains there in like Hicktown? Was that my idea or was that Josh's?
I don't know whose idea, because half of us wanted to go to DC, right? Because it was two
By
groups,
half, do you
basically.
mean you?
Well,
half of us. Wait, there was 3 groups. That was Thanksgiving weekend, if you remember. What was it? So like 3 groups. 2 wanted to stay at base. where 3 wanted to go to DC, and then another group, small group, wanted to go to the mountains of Virginia, the Shenandoah Valley.
So what was it? So 4 of us went, and that was peer pressure. I did not want to go. I did not want to go at all. If you remember that, but I went, and I don't know if I regretted it or not. It was fun, but
it wasn't my number one. It wasn't my number one thing to do on that long weekend, because we had 4 days off. I don't know if that was the one-man multi yet or not.
I don't know if it was. So in rescue swimmer school, you have like the big, I guess, litmus test, if you will, is the one-man test, and you're dealing with a combative survivor in the water, and like it's definitely like if you make it through that, you have a good chance of succeeding through rescue swimmer school. Yeah, so I don't know if it was before or after that, but yeah, we had that days off, and I guess I convinced folks that it'd be fun to go, on a kind of hikey adventure, because I am a big outdoors enthusiast, and that's why I run this podcast. But yeah, I think like I got Josh on board immediately to go to Virginia, because he's more or less from there, right? He was telling us all about like the Last of the Mohegans movie, and he's like, oh yeah, let's go to those mountains, the Last of the Mohegan type mountains. And I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. And then we dragged you. We were like, dude, we can't go without Ryan. Like, he's gonna balance us out,
I guess what else would I have done?
Exactly. But yeah, I remember you being ticked off the majority of the trip. Well, not the majority, but like the better part of the second half.
Yeah, for sure.
And still to this day, like probably one of the moments I laughed the most in my life is when we're riding back, and I had been driving most of the trip, but I had my relief. Who was that again? Tilka, yeah. So Tilka takes the wheel, and I'm just like resting in the back. But I think we were all kind of cold, because our immune system's down from being through this elite military school. And I had this phlegm, and I recall like the window being down. Just hooked the biggest mouth-filling, like watering loogie out the window, not realizing that the rear window was open. And somehow,
but that's
somehow the thing is, you weren't even sitting behind me, like behind the passenger.
I wasn't.
You were in the diagonal seat behind, like on the left side. So
yeah,
I was sitting shotgun,
passenger seat,
passenger right front. I spit this loogie. Somehow, I guess the window's open. Didn't realize loogie
gets sucked in
90 degrees and just cakes your face. I'm talking
goes
eyeballs.
Past Latuca.
Eyeballs.
Yeah.
It passes Josh. It goes eyeballs, hair, all the way to the chin and the neck, just covered in this loogie. And I recall you not saying anything for like 5 seconds because you're just in shock. And already just imagine somebody that's pissed off about this trip not wanting to be there, sitting casually in this car, just chilling, just trying to get home, not wanting to be there, and then all of a sudden gets a fucking mad loogie in their mouth, and you just let 5 seconds go by. I forget what you said, but it was basically like
yeah, that was definitely I didn't have words, man. I was so pissed. Yeah.
And we just like died laughing at you, or not laughing, which just made it so much funnier. Yeah. So anyway, all right, let's move aside from like the whole helicopter rescue swimmer school. But that said, like I think that's why we became good friends. Is like we had those opposite personalities, as far as like you were the squared away sailor, still very humorous, but then I was kind of the shit show.
I think it was because I was the one that would put up with you.
Wow. Okay.
That's why we're still friends, and I appreciate you. I always have.
All right. Good to know. Well, one of the things I did through helicopter rescue swimmer school is I remember after that trip, you didn't want to join on this one, but a little canoe expedition in the swamps by Elizabeth City, North Carolina there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so canoeing was something.
Didn't you?
Yeah, I rented it.
You rented them from MWR. Yeah, okay. I kind of remember that.
And I recruited like a junior rescue swimmer candidate going through like the baby class because nobody else wanted to go on these ridiculous adventures.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. But anyway, so like let's talk about your canoe adventure here on the Wildertainment podcast. So what got you into this sport of canoeing?
So I grew up where this race takes place, so it was pretty much unavoidable, and that's Grayling, Michigan. They call it like the heart of the North. It's literally like dead center of the upper lower peninsula of Michigan, and that's where the race takes place on the AuSable River. So I've seen it growing up as a kid, and then as a teenager, I worked at canoe livery, Borchers Canoe Livery. I worked there for 5 years through high school and my 2 years of college before the Coast Guard. And you're going to see that race. You're going to see all the racers, the atmosphere, and it was just unavoidable. I mean, everyone, they call it like the marathon itch or like marathon fever. Everybody gets it. And everyone wants to like think, oh, I can do that. I'm going to try it. And eventually, right after high school, it's when we decided, it's like, I got to try this.
Is it like the Super Bowl of Michigan in that community?
I would say, I'd compare it like this. I by no means really watched NASCAR, but it's like a big thing in America, right? It's kind of like NASCAR. It's literally like a bunch of rednecks in a canoe going down river with like 50,000 people following you. And you've got like your pit crews. You've got people stopping and, replenishing your water and food and whatnot. Yeah, it's more like NASCAR of northern Michigan on the river. Is how I would describe this.
You say 50,000 people watching. How do they watch? Like all along the river? Are they driving and watching in different spots? Or
yeah. So I guess the race starts 9 p.m. It's the last full weekend in July. So it's always a Saturday, always the last full weekend in July. So it's never the same date every year. It's always different. And it starts 9:00 at night, cannon goes off. And it starts on the street. So you running down about 4 or 5 blocks downtown Grayling into Old AuSable Fly Shop, where the river begins, basically in the center of town. And you're going down 120 miles to basically Lake Huron. And people just, once the mass start begins, that's where like the crowd, the biggest crowd probably throughout the race starts there in Grayling at night. And then they jump in their cars and they'll follow you. They stop, there's multiple landings and bridges between Grayling and Oscoda, the city that it ends in. And it's kind of like a big drunk bash. There's, party buses following this thing. Oh yeah, it gets rowdy. Very, very rowdy.
And you know how like Michigan folks like to party and drink. So
oh yeah,
if you're saying it's rowdy, it's rowdy. That's crazy though. So it starts like in a river, but ends in Lake Huron, which is, if anybody's ever been in those bodies of water in the Great Lakes, those are basically oceans. But it ends at the mouth. It
stops at the mouth. Yeah,
okay.
You don't actually go out to the lake. You could see it, but you end in Oscoda, where Lake Huron meets the AuSable River.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, so you decide to join this, and how old are you at this point?
So what do we do? So it's a 2-person race. They call them C2s. Yeah. And then there's C1s. These are expensive boats. We call them boats. They're $5,500 brand new. A lot of people will buy them used, right? It's a coal carbon fiber layout. They maybe 25, 30 pounds.
Wow.
Is all this canoe weighs. Yeah. So from what you're talking about, like you're like an Old Town canoe, that's like what, 80 pounds?
Depends on the length, but yeah.
Pretty sure. Yeah. So 30 pounds, that's really freaking light for a canoe. But I think I was out of high school or finishing high school. So it would have been 2009, I think. My buddy and I, Mike Davis, I asked him to go with me. I didn't have anybody else to go with me. He was always interested in this race. So I found a guy on the Michigan Canoe Racing Forum.
Was that on MySpace at the time?
Something like that. It's what the heck was it? It's I think it's miracing.org. And that's how like all the paddlers communicated. They had like a training page, they had gear for sale, whatever, like tips and like, hey, I need a partner to go train with. Because you need 2 people to go train. And that they kind of say like, oh, your partner, that's like you're married. When you pick whoever you're racing the marathon with, it's pretty much a marriage.
Well, why is it like basically a marriage?
The hours of training that you put in, coordinating. Training on a river, you've got to stage a car you know, 40 miles down the road or wherever you're going to end. And you need, you know, 2 bodies to paddle this boat. And so now you have 2 different work schedules. You have 2 different people's lives. They don't, you know, family, kids, whatever.
So yeah, when you're paddling with somebody, it's like a big commitment because it takes 2 of you to put the same hours in to be really good at it in that regard. If it was a 1-person canoe race, sure. I mean, you're just solely relying on yourself. You don't have to worry about anybody else, but that definitely, I would say, makes it a little bit more difficult. So you kind of want to pick a partner who's on the same page as you. You're like, okay, are we just trying to finish this, or are we trying to, you know, make a name for ourselves?
And how'd you pick your partner specifically, or was it just like what you could get?
Yeah, it was pretty much like it was pretty much what you could get. Neither of us knew how to canoe or paddle in one of those race boats. It's completely different. You know, like I worked at a canoe livery. Sure, I've round boats my whole life. I can canoe. However, when you get in one of these race boats, it's a circular bottom, so they're very rolly. They're very unstable. It takes hours to learn really how to keep that boat upright and how to move it and how to steer it, how to get it going fast, like on like a set of railroad tracks. So not a lot of people who are experienced want to really paddle with you. Like the more experienced people that are racing, they're competing, and they're like, well, you kind of figure it out on your own. You know, they'll help you along the way, but they're not. It's not like you're going to partner up with someone who's really done this before, unless they're like a family member. So yeah, I found a boat that was in my price range. I mean, it was like $2,500 I think I paid for it. It was a used boat. It was a JD Pro, and we can get more into that too, because there are a few styles and cuts of that canoe. So we met this guy about 3 or 4 hours downstate.
I remember parking in like a Sonic. We got cheeseburgers, and we were just waiting for him to show up or whatever. And we were going to meet at Applebee's across the road because he was from Indiana, I think.
Oh,
wow. So we kind of met halfway. Yeah. So he like, hey, you know, I'm here. We're like, we look over and we see this canoe on top of this guy's car, and we're like, oh, it's gotta be it. We drive over there. The guy was super nice. He had bought it, kind of like had that marathon fever, like I talked about, and realized there's no way in hell he's going to be able to do this. So he sold the boat. I bought it. And then we took it out to Lake Marguerite. That's kind of where a lot of the paddlers in Grayling will train and do sprints in the summertime, fall, spring, whenever there's ice, really. And right away, it's just you flip over. You just flip over. You flip over. You go and you just flip over. So at the beginning stages, you become very good at flipping that canoe back over and learning how to get back in that boat. Much different than any other canoe because it's so tippy to begin with. There's a certain way you have to get back into it. So we trained, and there was a couple races in the fall, and we decided to go do one of those. So before the marathon and even after the marathon, throughout the state of Michigan, there's several, I want to say maybe a dozen canoe races that are about 2 to 3 hours long. So those are kind of like your training grounds, and you can win some money in those too. Not much, but everyone goes and competes in those, or for the most part, before marathon. And there's a couple, like I said, 2 races after the marathon that they do. So we joined in on one of those. This was our first year. We just bought the boat. And so we didn't obviously paddle the race that year. That would have been 2009, I think. Mm-hmm. And we raced that race. It was up at the Tkamadan Falls. Did you ever go there?
Maybe.
Didn't we go there? Yeah, up maybe. In the UP?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. We had to.
I don't know.
So that's where that race was at. And that race ends actually on Lake Superior. Beautiful river, the Tkamadan Falls. Obviously we're south or below the falls where the race starts. And that race was rough because when you start, all these races start in a mass just line up. Everybody just lines up on the flag dropper, and it's just a mass chaos start. And you're all, I don't know, a foot from each other, a couple feet from each other. And for 2 guys who are inexperienced, who have like no right being out there, but we're just like, we went into it like, we're going to do this. It's a little scary and rough. So we tipped over that race, I think 2 or 3 times, which kind of sucked because, you don't want to like be the last person, but I'm pretty sure we came second to last to that race. But we finished it, and that race is only 2 or 3 hours long. That's nothing compared to this marathon. So it was kind of like should we really do this, or should we, think about this? But all the excitement, and even at the end and just being able to finish, we both like were 100% sticking to it. And that's kind of how we decided, just like, well, no one else is going to race with us, so let's just race together. And we graduated high school together. So this is a pretty close friend that played high school football with.
Wait, how do you write a overturned canoe? Like if your feet don't touch the bottom?
Yeah. So these boats, you throw it over, like just flip it back over, right? So it's partially submerged-ish because it's full of water. If you want to like pop up one end to try and suck out a little bit of that water. Otherwise, you're just going to roll it over and there's going to be water in it. You want to try and roll it over with as little water as possible, but that's pretty hard.
Yeah. How do you do that?
You got to hope that you have a clean like fallout. So if you're going to tip, like if you commit to it and you just like try and hold on to your boat, that thing's going to roll over and sink a little deeper. But if you already like see it coming and you kind of like hop out, your canoe might not fully tip over. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. You like jump out. Like, you're going to fall. So just commit and jump out.
Yeah. Cause it's going to make getting that water a lot easier. And long story short, if it is out where it's deep, you're usually going to swim that thing back to where you can stand up reasonably.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, you're not going to be able in the middle of a lake and be able to turn that thing over. If there's a ton of water in it, good luck. There's also bailers. Have you ever seen any of those canoes like that? I know Winona makes them in theirs. So like on the floor of the canoe is a little bailer. It's a little lever. You flip open the lever, push it down with your foot, and then the water starts sucking out.
Okay.
As you move, right? Yeah. So that's essentially what you do. And you have to get on opposite sides to counter the roll of that canoe, that race boat. Yeah. Because they're so tippy. So you're the sternman, the guy paddling in the back, and then your bowman, whoever's up front. You're going to get on opposite sides, and you're going to place both hands on the gunnels of that boat. And you're going to give it like a 3 count, and you're going to roll up and spread your chest and stomach across those gunnels. And then you're going to wiggle yourself in and swing your hips in. Gotcha. Is the best way to do this. The other thing you could do, which we've had to do before, if it's too choppy, like if you're out on the lake training and it's too choppy, you tip over. What you do is, and this sounds crazy, but it's incredibly effective. The sternman gets in, and the bowman hangs up on the bow, and he just curls his feet over the bow and just puts his hands up, right? So he's just laying in the water, holding on the bow of the boat, and he's your stabilizer. Yeah. And he just keeps it stable, and you just paddle in by yourself until you can get somewhere where you can stand. And that works great.
So you're basically towing, like, but by towing, I mean like you're paddling, pushing the person that's holding your ass slightly elevated by pulling the front end of the boat in. That's crazy. That's funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It works.
It's like a Viking boat, except the dragon's underwater holding you from sinking.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That is it in a nutshell. And if every once in a while you'd have to do that. There was one day we were out there every Wednesday, the locals, the Grayling local race community, which is honestly probably the majority of the canoe marathoners like that compete in the marathon. I mean, this is like a small group of people. Unless you're in it or you're from that area, no one's really heard of the AuSable River Canoe Marathon, which is crazy because it's like the longest nonstop canoe race in the continent. It's a wild race. So anyways, every Wednesday we do sprints, lake sprints. The second that ice melts on Lake Marguerite, we're out there training. And early on in the spring, that water is still when that ice thaws out 35, 36 degrees.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do you
So,
wear? Do you don't even have a wetsuit when you you tip over? Or?
no, well, that's the thing. Like once you're good enough, there's really no reason that you're going to tip over unless you're going out and wake. Like these boats are built for shallow water rivers. They're not really to go out on a Great Lake or anything with any kind of chop. They're just not. So when you have like a 2-foot wave or any kind of wind chop out on the lake, it's pretty bad. And I was training with one of my buddies, Isaac. He's another paddler. On Wednesdays, you would just try and pair up with whoever you could just to get the sprints in. Because it's a great workout. You're training with all these other elite paddlers who have been doing it for a decade or even 2, so you just want to get out on the lake sprints just to get involved. And there was 2 experienced paddlers that had tipped over that day, and it was pretty bad because, like I said, that water was freezing. And when we started, it was windy, it was choppy, but we were on McIntyre Landing. I think it's the west or south side of the lake. And we figured out, like, all right, well, the conditions are pretty bad, but this is like everyone is itching to get out. Everyone wants to go. Let's just see if we can just paddle straight across, just do a straight line. Don't ever go, wave side, against these waves, just go straight across. And then we'll do sprints over there because it's dead. It's dead over on the other side of the lake. So
everyone kind of like takes off intermittently. I think there was like 6 or 8 of us boats out there. And me and Isaac were like, this is our first year training at this point. And we were way out of our league. We were like, it's not really worth it. If we tip over in this, we already kind of knew there's no way we're going to flip this thing back over. And the water was so cold. A part of it's like you want to say like, oh, I'm good enough to do this, but you just got to, measure those risks. So we flipped around and said, screw this, we're going back in. And
wait, what do you mean?
2
like,
people,
as if like you assess the fact that if you tipped over, it was game over? Like,
yeah, man.
Like you die?
Yeah.
Unless somebody gets you in a canoe, right? Yeah, because that's one thing I wanted to talk about. Like the risks of crossing a lake in a canoe. I think at any point, if it's a large lake, even if it's not these cold temperatures like you mentioned, is a risky endeavor. You better make sure that you have a strong swimmer or 2 or both, because like I recall taking like an ex-girlfriend out on the lake, and there was like an island out there, and I forget why, like I should have known better as an outdoorsman, but I think she brought up like, hey, why don't we try to like canoe to that island? And I was like, all right, let's do it. And it was like a shitty, one of those like rent a canoe and like crappy paddles, like not even a wood paddle. And we just like went out there, and I was the stern, like definitely navigating and shit. But like as we got like a quarter of the way out there to this island, I started realizing like, oh no, that's right. This is the stupidest idea ever. Like it was cold. It was I want to say late fall. And I was like, sure, we had life like PFD, so like life jackets, but still I was like, if we tip this thing over, my hands are going to be numb within 5 minutes. And I know I probably can still survive by kicking to shore, but I need to get to shore and somehow get a rescue system for her, because I know she can't swim as well as I can.
Right.
And I know I can't tow her just without fins or anything. So it was basically like I would have to leave her behind, not drowning, but freezing, like Titanic scene freezing, as I try to get some help. And I don't think people understand that. Like if you're doing these rent-a-canoes, like flipping this back over and trying to like empty it out is often not an option. It's a commitment.
Yeah, you got to swim it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, if you're crossing a big body of water, most of the time you go around it, you stay near the shore, which will take forever, but you're running the risks of, or you're not running the risks of dying in the middle of the lake.
Right. And I mean, I don't care who you are, even if you're a rescue swimmer, like you would be okay for a little bit if that happened to you. But if you're in that when that water's that cold, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter who you are. You'll survive a little longer than the average person. But your time's numbered. You got to get out, right? When the water's 35, 36 degrees, I mean, maybe you or I would have like 30 minutes, someone who is, out of shape, just a recreational canoer or something like that, maybe 15 minutes.
Well, do you think a more body fat though would at least keep you insulated for a little longer?
I think it's mental. They say body fat and the insulation and all that, but I think it's mental.
You think
It's
surviving
just
cold water temperatures is mental?
surviving in general.
Hmm.
It's if you're mentally stronger individual, in any kind of life threatening situation, I think you're going to last longer, no matter what your, say, insulation levels are, right, on your body.
You mean just based on like will to live and grittiness?
Yes, absolutely.
Huh.
Because some people just, if it hurts just enough, right? If that pain's just enough, it's easier to there's like, well, I'm just gonna let go, And when I was back to that story, we realized we were done. We're like, screw this. It's way too cold. Like, we just knew if we flipped over, we're, I don't know, 500 yards off the shore. Like, everyone took off. Like, to get across that lake, I mean, distance is hard to judge then, but it was a couple thousand yards. So, I mean, it was at least a mile, I would say, to get across to the bay where there was no wind. So we made it out almost halfway, and we're like, no way, turn around. Well, we turned around with two other canoes. Two canoes went straight across. And then once we got to shore, we turn around and look at the bottom of a canoe in the water. So yeah, so somebody flipped over, and we're trying to figure out like what the hell is going on. And it was Matt and Mo. These are two guys that are seasoned paddlers. I mean, they're like top 3 finishers. Like, they've been paddling for 10, 12, 15 years. They're locals, right? So these are the guys we look up to. And me and Isaac were looking at them, and we're like, why aren't they flipping the canoe over? Why aren't they getting back in the boat? Like, what is going on? And then we're thinking like, well, heck, we've been paddling for like 15, 20 minutes since we started. Like, when did they tip over? We didn't see them tip over. It was so choppy. It was just, you locked in, you just still as can be, railroad tracks. You're not looking around in the boat. We're just trying to turn around and get back to shore, because as you're going in the chop in those boats, you're going like this, and waves are coming into the boat. So it was just a common sense thing for us to get the heck out of there. But they tried to turn around just like the rest of us, and they flipped over. So we're all wondering, and we're all thinking, well, these guys are professionals, like they'll figure it out. That was kind of where we went wrong. But luckily, a couple of the other guys who are professionals and have been doing this for a while realized the severity of it. And like I said, back then, I'm 18, 19 years old. We're just kids. We're just like, oh, this is funny-ish, or maybe not. I don't know. Like, what are these guys doing? Are they playing with us? Well, because they're, 10, 12 years older than all of us. They're adults. They've been doing it for a while. And the other guys that made it back to shore realized the severity of it. And they start going up and down the shoreline of the lake at all these houses. And they just grabbed somebody's boat. There was a rowboat out there. They just grabbed it and just took off. And we're like, okay, we see where this is going. Like, that's when we decided, like, should we call 911? Like, I've never called 911 before. What do we do here? And yeah, so they get out there, and they were able to get them back in the boat. We had no idea they were severely hypothermic. They couldn't even get in the boat. We had no clue.
How long do you think they were in the water for?
Over 20 minutes.
Oh,
easily. Yeah, easily over 20 minutes. And they're just hanging on to this canoe, right? Like, it could have gone so bad. So bad. No one died.
But that's
they made it
I feel like that's close to death, being 20 minutes in that water, 35 degrees.
Easily. But yeah, Cameron, he went out with a rowboat and got them back in, and they were so hypothermic they couldn't move. They literally, you had to pick them up. You had to like shove them into a car we just cranked the heat up and throw wool blankets on them. And they just sat there for probably 45 minutes before and they were still feeling nauseous. Like just everything hurts. It's like this pins and needles thing. It takes a while for your body to thaw back out after you're subjected to that, cold.
Did you ever hear something called screaming barfies?
No.
So it's like
Sounds
in rock climbing, it's kind of a term where if you go out in very cold temperatures and you'll climb, I guess what happens is, your hands are frozen because they touch this cold rock, right? So you get like very, very cold fingers and you try to like shake your hands out to get blood back into it. But it takes most climbers a while before they get to a point where I guess warm blood does eventually rush into your extremities. And I guess that the cold like relocates and it makes you incredibly nauseous. Maybe it's the cold blood that shoots back into your main system and like warm blood gets into your hands. But basically at that point, your hands will hurt. They'll go very like pins and needles. But they like most climbers that they feel the need to throw up. Like it's like, ugh. And it's like, one of my good friends, a very strong and like hard-minded person, he'll just be on a route and like when it happens, I remember once, like it was one of my first times climbing with him. I was like, this guy's a big old weenie because he's like on the rock and he just goes like, oh, he's just like look at his hand. He's like, oh, and I was like, what is happening? And he goes like, I got the screaming barfies bad. And I was like, fuck is that? So yeah, basically it's like one of those things. As a Canadian, a proud Canadian, I guess somehow my anatomy, it just doesn't occur for me somehow. I've been in cold temperatures like ice climbing and stuff, but it doesn't happen. But it happens to a lot of people. So I'm assuming, in a sense, this is kind of a similar situation where these guys have been in this 35-degree water for 15 minutes, and the cold blood might be coming out of their extremities, and warm blood is rushing into them, and it just makes you very nauseous. Like, because it's that cold change your temps, maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had it happen to me when we've had races in the winter, and I've fallen out, and then can finish the race, an hour later downriver. And I don't know if it's like what your blood's feeling when it's warming up. Me personally, that pain of the pins and needles was like so just disgusting feeling and so uncomfortable. That's what made me, I feel nauseous. Like just that icky feeling, like just mentally, maybe it's triggering like, gosh, this feels so gross. I just want to throw up kind of thing.
Not fun. But those guys survived. They're okay. I think we all learned a little lesson that day. So the next time we did go out, like the following week, I mean, it was flat calm. So there's like certain risks I would take. If it was choppy, I would still do it, but not when it's that cold.
Yeah.
Like, not a chance.
What do you wear? Do you wear wool?
No. When we're training, I mean, like I said, I compare this race to NASCAR. I mean, we're a bunch of like dumb rednecks, right? So we're wearing cutoffs on that day. Yeah, we're wearing cutoffs, maybe some thermal tights or leggings, maybe a long sleeve if you want, but most of us are just kind of like dumb, like crazy mentality, like let's go train, and that's, so nothing crazy as far as gear goes, but most of us are wearing board shorts and a cutoff t-shirt or something.
Jesus. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I think this as we get into it now with this race and stuff, I think, and I said that in the beginning, people underestimate canoeing as not like an epic sport. It's like, oh, let's go take your grandma and your mom for a freaking canoe ride, right? And certainly can be one of those calm, peaceful things. But once you start talking about river canoeing or just being out in like a choppy area in a canoe, I still have like kind of PTSD from river canoeing. It's epic as far as like, those things are insanely tippy in the water. You need skills of like your different strokes, your techniques. You need to be a cohesive team with your bowman and your stern. It's so easy to tip these things. It's not even funny. And like the more you tip it, personally, like at first I would, like, when I would get in these canoes and hop on the river, and wouldn't tip, I was like cocky, right? Like, oh, it's fine. Like this is canoeing. It's leisurely. But then once you start tipping a lot of times, you start to get, again, that like PTSD of like, this thing could tip at any moment. You know? I don't know. Do you feel like that?
Yeah, I mean, when we started training in those boats, I mean,
Oh, you're glitched. Damn it.
yeah, it glitched a little bit, but I got you back. I got you now.
Okay. Is the camera still recording?
This is ridiculous. Just let me call the secretary 1 second.
What did you just call me?
What?
What did you just call me?
Damn, we were on a roll.
Yeah, we were. We haven't even hardly talked about the race.
I know, we need to.
You want to keep talking about your little recreational paddling?
Where did we leave off as far as we were talking about?
You were talking about some weird story about the feeling of tipping over. Like, ooh, it's scary.
Well, don't you have like when you tip over? Sorry, all right, sorry, folks, we cut out. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I would call it an oh shit moment.
Yeah, well, like my immediate instinct, which a canoeer should never do, and most, I'd say, recreational canoers do, is grab those gunwales. So, is it gunwales? Is that what you said? Call it? Gunwales?
Yeah, you know, I'd call it gunnels, but yeah,
Gunnels.
gun whales. I don't. What's the technical term? I don't even know.
Gunnels sounds more legit. So, yeah, when you start to feel that tippiness, right? Or say you're gonna turn on a river, right? I'd say like the average person's instinct as you're turning this canoe, this big wall across the river, is to kind of lean upriver because of how that current's pushing on your canoe. But the reality is you're supposed to be really truly leaning downriver so that the water flow hits your canoe and doesn't like go into it, if that makes sense. So basically, like if you're leaning upriver, then you're just filling up your canoe with water and then you'll tip. So you're trying to lean downriver. But for me, like my instinct is definitely not to do that. And then as well, once things get rocky and choppy, my instinct is to grab those gunnels, which you're not supposed to. You're supposed to stabilize with your paddle, like out there, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yep. That is what you do too. When you realize like, so it's a 2-person thing. So once one person loses that balance, you might try and counter it. But if you're the sternman and you can see what's going on, a lot of times you do hit the panic button and I'm bailing on this one.
Yeah.
We're no saving it. But yeah, those things for sure are the hardest part, is to figure out how to keep those race canoes stable. For what you are talking about, as far as like recreational paddling and stuff like that, those canoes, you kind of like throw all those rules out the window when you're in a race canoe. You're kind of basically going to do things that normally you wouldn't do to prevent yourself from leaning or tipping over. We're going to do it to turn that canoe.
How so?
We can turn on the sprints and a lot of those races. You race around a buoy, and we can get that canoe. It's an 18.5-foot canoe. We can flip it on a dime. Like we can literally spin it 180 degrees pretty much, and just like the flash of an eye. Like it's impressive and it's really fun to watch. But typically the sternman calls all the cadence. So about like every 3 to 5 strokes, because you're always paddling on opposite sides for the most part. You never want to paddle on the same side because that's what would tip you over, right? So the sternman's always calling, and we call it a HUP, like HUP, hurry up and paddle. And that's kind of like our cadence word that everyone uses, or switch if you want. But most of us always say HUP. It's you're stroking about 50, 80 strokes a minute when you're racing. Every 3 to 5 or 5 to 10 or whatever you're doing, you're navigating the river. So the sternman's paddling, you're the captain of that boat, but you're also going off of the speed of your bowman. So whatever your bowman's doing, you're matching their stroke on the opposite side. It's going in the water at the same time. It's coming out of the water at the same time. And coming up to those buoy turns, you're going to call out the cadence, like HUP. But you're also going to bring them over to the same side, essentially. So you have to counteract them coming over, because when you call a HUP, normally they're going to think, okay, he's switching over to the other side. But when you're coming to that buoy turn, you're going to go on the same side. You're going to do like a wide draw out, like you're pushing out, like it's a sweeping stroke, I guess is what it'd be called.
I think they call it like
you're
full sweep, right? Or something like that.
Full sweep, yep. Yeah. So you're both doing that. And then the sternman is going to go ahead and lean that boat in. So the widest part of that boat, the middle portion that bows out the most, is dipped in the water. And you're dragging, so that boat is leaned up like this. Both the paddlers are over like this. You're doing a huge sweep. That starts your turn. And then you're going to call out cross rudder. So the bowman is going on that side, right side. They're going to lean over, cross rudder. So instead of ruddering on that, your one side, you swing the paddle over, cross your body, flip that blade like 180 degrees, and maybe tilt it. Like the farther you tilt it, the more water resistance is pushing you. So you're going to slow down, but you're also going to turn it faster. So you want to have that like happy balance. And then the sternman is just going to go crazy doing those sweeping strokes. And that boat's going to flip 180 degrees in a couple of seconds.
Yeah, you're getting into like the nitty gritty of the types of strokes. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is how no one seems to know how to canoe unless you know.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah, it's true. I saw it for 5 years at a canoe livery. We would send people down in your traditional Old Town canoe just for a nice Saturday afternoon paddle. And 10 minutes later, they walk across the street and say your canoe's down in someone's yard. It's pretty funny, but it's true. I just don't get it. I don't get how people don't know how to canoe.
I'd say the Canadians know a little more than the average North
I
American.
would agree with you. Half the people in that canoe marathon are French Canadian, and they only speak French. There's a Triple Crown race. So I know we're talking about the AuSable River Canoe Marathon, but they call it the Triple Crown. If you race in all 3 of those races, you complete the Triple Crown of the canoe marathons. The first one is the Clinton Regatta. It's an 80-mile race in upstate New York on the Clinton River. Then the second race of that year is the AuSable River Canoe Marathon, the 120-mile race from Grayling to Oscoda. And then the third leg of that Triple Crown races is the 𝐏𝐨𝐝𝐿𝐼𝐋 in Canada. And it's a 3-day long race that you do, I think, 40 to 50 miles a day or something like that. Wow. And that's largely all Canadians. Yeah.
Do you think instead of that HUP communication things, they say "oop"?
They say something. I don't know what they say, but is that what you guys call it? Oop?
I don't know. Oop. I don't know. But getting back to those strokes, like I think everyone that hops in a canoe, and you even see these in like Hollywood movies, is people don't even know like the basic J stroke. So, you'll always see this in movies or just recreational paddlers. They'll do maybe 1 or 2 strokes on one side, especially like if they're solo, right? They'll do 1 or 2 strokes on one side and then switch the paddle over to compensate for how like the canoe has now veered to the opposite side. And then they'll do two strokes on that side, switch, do 2 strokes on the other. And it's just like basically a canoe that's zigzagging, like the bow, the front is just going back and forth and back and forth. It's so annoying to see, especially like when it's a movie where it's supposed to be like either like a mountain man or like an American Indian, which knew how to canoe better than anyone. And they're just doing that. And you're just racking your brain like, oh my God, this is so annoying to watch. I don't know. Yeah. So let's just talk about like kind of the basic strokes that folks might not know about, like the J stroke, right? Why don't you explain that one just briefly?
I would say, that's just to kind of straighten you out, I would say. As you're paddling down, you would do like a full draw. You're reaching forward and then pulling back, and then the bottom part of a J, you're doing that with your paddle, and that'll kind of straighten your canoe out. So if you're starting to go down the river and your bow is going towards the bank of the river and you're trying to get the back end of your canoe to straighten out downstream, a J stroke would probably help you with that.
Yeah.
But as far as like basic paddling, what we got, the forward stroke is the simplest, most common stroke that you're going to do. I don't know, probably 90% of the time you're canoeing, and that's reaching forward. And you kind of want to visualize like you're putting, and this is how we race, maybe tell me if I'm doing this wrong or as far as recreational paddling goes. But our methodology is you drive that blade down, and you're kind of trying to visualize yourself like you're in that canoe and you're pulling you and the canoe towards that pull, towards your paddle. And you don't want to pull the paddle out like way behind you. You want to have it come out about at your hip, right? Because you can pull back and pull the blade out too far back, and you're actually going to slow yourself down because of the water that you're pulling out with it. So you want to have a nice easy entry in, pulling back, and then exit the blade out of the water about at your hip line.
Yeah.
But yeah, the forward paddle, J strokes, the sweep are what we would use, but there's a few more common ones. Like, I don't know, is the cross rudder like that common?
I forget. Yeah, it is.
Recreational paddler. Okay.
So that's like the guy in the front, the bowman, is like crossing over. So he's normally paddling on his one side, but then instead of swapping the paddle over, like where your top hand is swapped, he just crosses over the bow and basically affects like a turn maneuver. Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing. And one of the things as far as just the general forward stroker, what they teach is you often see people, the paddles like in a diagonal as they reach forward, and then it kind of like tips like a tilting point, and then it ends up way behind them. So yeah, that's definitely something to avoid. I think what they recommend, at least like what I've learned, is you're pretty much trying to keep the paddle as vertical as possible the entire stroke. And as you reach forward, you turn, but you're kind of turning with the torso, keeping the eyes front, but like turning with the torso in I think they described it as like opening a door in a sense, like maybe like a big door or something. But yeah, you're basically rotating your entire torso, keeping your hips in line with the canoe and your head in line with the canoe, but the torso just twists. Yeah, so it's not too far forward, it's not too far back.
Yes.
I mean, it's a very, I guess any sport's complicated once you really break it down and get to like the expert level of them. Even running, something as simple as running. But yeah, canoeing is definitely one of those where like perfecting these skills are crazy.
Yes, absolutely. And the paddles we're using too are carbon fiber as well, and those are 8 to 10 ounces.
Wow.
So it's not like a cedar strip canoe with like a wooden paddle or anything like that. Though they're different. That's why you can get in about 50-80 strokes a minute.
Yeah,
as we're paddling down the river.
Did as far as like maneuverability goes, did you watch that video I sent you? That
I did. Yeah. I didn't know that solo canoe synchronized, or was a synchronized sport. That was unreal. I've never seen that ever.
So, I mean,
he was dancing in a canoe in the water.
Yeah. So we were shown this in like our canoe course in my like outdoor education program, as like just maneuvering a canoe and like the skills you can have from different strokes, like the pry is where you're in the boat and you bend more or less the paddle away from the side of the canoe, and that like affects a specific turn. And then there's the draw, which is the opposite of that. You put your paddle out on the side of the canoe and you pull in. So if you watch this video of, I guess his name's Mark Ornstein, in 2007, it's this guy in a canoe, and I'll show it on YouTube if you guys are tuning in, but it's really impressive because this guy's like dancing in a canoe in a tuxedo with like music, and he's just making this canoe, he's all alone making this canoe do these like spin moves, going backwards. It's like, yeah, it's like a drifter.
Synchronized swimming is
like,
what I envisioned it. I was like, my God, this guy, he's a synchronized swimmer, but in a canoe. It's
really impressive. Yeah. And it just goes to show all the different strokes and techniques that you can have in a canoe. So I'd recommend tuning in and checking that out on YouTube if you're watching there. But yeah, I think that's kind of cool. But that said, in canoe racing, I feel like you guys are such a cohesive unit that you don't need that many very specific strokes. Am I accurate in that? Like,
absolutely, yes, I would definitely say that. The hours that you put in, easily hundreds of hours that you're training with your partner, and when you're calling it out, you just kind of you both already know like what's going on. To navigate that 120-mile stretch of the AuSable River, you got to put in time, because you kind of that like saying, like the back of your hand, you really do need to. The race starts at 9 p.m. at night. So the majority of that race is in the dark. And this river, it's not like a wide river. It's pretty narrow at the beginning. Lots of logs, lots of rocks. A lot of people will shred their boats up, and they'll have to drop out of the race because they'll put a hole in their boat. That's just not repairable. I mean, if you're lucky, you can throw duct tape on it and try and repair it, sometime after the race. But as far as just kind of like instinctively knowing your partner, yeah, you're forward stroke. That's it. And then when you need to turn, your partner will kind of feel that counterbalance, because you might give them like a warning, hey, we're going on the same side, because those are really tippy. But that video that you did send, how that guy like leaned and was able to flip the canoe around?
Yeah.
We're doing the same thing, except it's just a much larger canoe and there's two people leaning that boat, going around turns. Sometimes you won't even do a sweep or a J stroke or any kind of turning stroke. I'll simply just lean the boat to the right and the boat will turn. So just leaning that canoe it's not a stroke, but you're turning the boat.
That's like a freaking skill of like trust it. Like, in rock climbing, there's climbing without a rope, which is called like soloing, right? Like
yes,
free soloing. And I feel like that's almost it's the consequences are as severe, but like that's what it is. You're kind of like super committed this physical action, That's pretty
no, absolutely. And you got to check out these canoes. They're impressive, just the layouts, the seats that are in them, that slide back and forth. It's all adjusted, and there's trim too. I mean, the weight of each canoe paddler, the position in the canoe, 100% affects the speed and tippiness of that boat. So the brace, there's a foot brace and a sliding seat for the sternman, and you're going to go back and forth in that boat to find your trim, because you get those boats up on plane, like you take off and you'll feel it pop up, or you'll feel it sink down when you hit that shallow water, and you'll slow down. So the bowman is usually the stronger guy. They're heavier. You definitely put the heavier guy up front to put that bow down so you can plane out once you get up to speed. And then you have to figure out that happy balance for that stern paddler as well in that boat. You got to check these out though. They're so impressive.
Yeah, I'll put it up on YouTube. You can send me a picture or whatever.
Savage River.
So what were you? You were the sternman or the bowman?
Yeah, I was the captain.
Oh,
I was a sternman.
Captain Ryan.
Yeah, I was a sternman. I always wanted to be the bowman. I feel like that's like the glory, like, because they're the first person that the crowd sees, or the first person that everybody sees in the boat. It's like, who is it? Oh, it's the guy up front first, and you get to set the pace too. So you're the power of that vessel. But my partner and I were a lot bigger than most of the people that did race. So, I mean, he was 205, 210. I was 180. So normally like the bowman would be about 180 or 190. Most of these guys that are racing are pretty small. But yeah, I didn't really have much of a choice with him.
Yeah, you guys had that kind of the football player build, for sure.
Oh, for sure. And going into it too, like a lot of people, because we're both rookies, our first year that we did it, and we trained like crazy, and we were doing pretty decent in the races, I guess, leading up to the marathon. So a lot of people that have been doing this for a long time, because we're jumping in and we're asking them as much advice as possible. We're going to sprints with them. We're learning everything we possibly can. Anybody who wants to give us the time of day, we are there listening. And a lot of people were kind of interested, like, how good are these guys going to do? These just 19-year-old punks, kids, like, think they're going to, finish this marathon. And we did pretty well that year. We actually got rookies of the year in our first canoe race, which everyone was kind of shocked how well we did. A lot of people, for their first time racing, they'll race with someone experienced just so they can like get a finish. Just finishing the race is awesome.
Yeah, I'll say
there's usually, I think, about 90 teams that race, And every year you're going to have, at least a dozen, if not 20 people or 20 teams drop out throughout the night. They're not going to make a checkpoint. They're going to get sick. Most of them are just sick. They quit. They just can't make it.
What do you mean by sick? They get nauseous?
They're just malnourished. They didn't hydrate. You cramp up, whatever. They just weren't in good enough shape to complete it.
Gotcha.
Is kind of what I think it comes down to.
Why does this race start at night though?
That's just the tradition. I couldn't tell you how or why that they chose that starting time. But you do finish around noon the next day. So you start at 9 p.m. on Saturday night. It's kind of like a party and a festival leading all up to it. The population of Grayling grows from like 2,000 to 3,000 people to, like I said, 50,000. It kind of goes off at night, and it's a party, not necessarily for the racers, but the spectators. It's a party all night. And then about noon the next day is when you finish.
What are the logistics of canoeing at night? What do you have? Headlamps?
Yeah. So no headlamps. That's just because your head's going to be moving nonstop. On the bow of the canoe, everyone's got whatever flashlight they want to use. I mean, this was 10 years ago, so technology as far as flashlights goes has probably gotten a lot better. So we had a pretty heavy flashlight on the bow, but it was extremely bright. So essentially what you do is you want to learn the river as best as possible. For us, we're locals, so we were able to canoe that river all the time. I worked on it. I lived on it. So you want to try and go without the light as long as possible. At the beginning of the race, you're kind of sticking with a lot of the teams. So you can kind of go off their light. You're going to be following people for a little bit. It's 120 miles. So obviously 94 teams are going to spread out a lot from start to finish. But yeah, it's basically a lot of people just use a mag light. Wow. You have a bracket on the bow, and you only turn it on when you need it. So
this is so
interesting.
So cool. It's such a niche little world that like is not publicized, or like I don't know. Is there even many YouTube videos on this race? I'm assuming there's some, but like it's not one of these like big renowned events. I don't think.
Yeah. So if you YouTube, there's all kinds of YouTube videos. I was just checking this morning, just to fact check a few things. Definitely YouTube. It's so awesome to see the start, because you start on the road downtown Grayling, like I said, and you pick up your canoes, and you run down to the river to start. But if you look at the views on those videos, it's not even 1,000, on some of those. So yeah, there's nothing. Michigan Out of Doors did do a pretty good episode on it. I would definitely watch that on YouTube.
Oh, cool.
For sure. That's probably your best bet as far as like a good video of it goes. But otherwise, yeah, it's weird for such in my opinion, such like a crazy race, 120-mile canoe race nonstop, that takes 14 to 19 hours through the night. You would think it would get more publicity, but it's one of those unique small sports that unless you're there, you don't really know about it.
Yeah. So let's talk the logistics of the race. Like, so at night, is that present a challenge in itself, or it's the visibility is kind of all right with those other lights?
It depends. So when you start at 9, you have still about an hour of daylight, so you don't even need to worry about a light then. And if you're not using the light, it's a lot of it. You're just your eyes are adjusting. I honestly don't think we flipped our light on until maybe 2 or 3 hours into the race, because if the sky's clear, you got a lot of natural light coming in, and then all the other canoers and spectators are still there with their own kind of light, car light, whatever. Every bridge you come to has huge spotlights on it, but it definitely adds I think like more a greater excitement to the race, because you're always like on constant alert. Like one twig almost just sticking out of the water could just throw you out of this race. Like you train for a year all year long, and all you want to do is finish this race, and you don't want some stupid log or a rock taking you out. And that's the greatest risk at nighttime, paddling that river, because you just don't know. You can paddle it every day of the year, and that current moves 24/7, and it's shifting logs and rocks all over the place. So you just hope for the best, and you also hope that your bowman can call stuff out before you guys hit it. But
so what's the whitewater like level of this river?
it's flat water. This one's pretty flat. There is 6 portages, so you're going through like 6 ponds is what they call them, but they're basically lakes. So you could have some waves, some chop if it's windy out there, but otherwise there's no white water. I would say there's a few spots where the currents create a whirlpool, and going across it can flip you if you don't practice like cutting that corner the right way. But yeah, it's fairly flat. I think the river goes about 3 to 5 miles per hour, just with current.
Yeah.
And then with us paddling, I think we're going about 8 to 10 miles per hour traveling.
Yeah. Shut that shit off. Aside from that, like, what are the logistics of it? This 120-mile race, like the stops,
Yeah, that's a good question. So you have a feed team. Everybody has a feed team. You can't paddle 120 miles and exert all that energy and dehydrate yourself for 15 hours without replenishing it. So every team's different. How my partner and I did it is we wanted to feed about every 2 hours of the race. So that's about I want to say that what would that be mileage wise? Let me see here. So it'd be about 18 to 20 miles. We're getting a new jug of water. We're getting food if we need it. We're getting salt pills, whatever, vitamins, whatever we need. Our feed team will be there. Say we break a paddle, we need an extra paddle. It's there. So about every 2 hours, your feed team is there to meet you. Typically, we carry. I would carry 2 1-liter jugs, and we just use like 16th inch or 1/4 inch size hose, just your basic plastic hose, and you just drill a hole in the top of a water bottle and stick that hose down there. Put something under the cap to prevent the hose from coming out, and then it stays behind your seat there. Everybody makes up their canoe however they want. We would always have goo shots taped along the gunnels. If we want a goo, you just rip it off, bite it off, and you can slam that down. I would always do, I think, a vitamin water and a jug of water, just not too much sugar, go half and half. And your food wise, whatever you want. I think we ate banana muffins a couple times. I mean, it's whatever you want to eat, whatever sits well with you. You're trying to eat on the move. You're also going to the bathroom in the boat if you have to. You're not stopping.
where you pee in the boat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I said, that baler that's right between your feet becomes your friend when you got to take a piss.
Do you go through the logistics of pulling out your dingling and peeing, or do you just like pee in your
go in the pants?
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, so you guys are really going after it for time. Like it's not like a leisurely thing. If you're saying you're barely stopping for the food, it sounds like you're always paddling.
It's a NASCAR pit crew for sure. I mean, you're pulling off, they wait out to just like where as far out as they can without it being too deep, your feed crew, and you kind of slow up, and you have them staggered. So you have like a couple people at your first, like when you first come in, because you're not going to be able to have, the whole group feed the bowman and stern traditionally at the same time. Or if you miss something, you want to have a couple people farther down the river, maybe 20 yards down in case they miss something. Because you're moving, you slow up a little bit, just enough to toss out your empty jug, throw the other one in, run the hose through your legs, and grab whatever snack you need, and you're gone. It's a matter of maybe less than half a minute.
It's literally a pit crew. And
It is.
who did
It
you
is totally a NASCAR pit crew.
who'd you get for this? Like, is it your mom or like?
Friends. Yeah,
Wow.
friends we went to high school with. I think Mike's parents did it for him. So we each had like 2 people that were like, helping or focusing on just us.
Wow.
And they would always keep an extra paddle. They always have an extra flashlight, say if ours died or whatever. But then you also have those dams. So there's 6 dams that you have to portage. So you get out. So that's a good time too. Just flip the boat over, empty out whatever waste you got in there, and have your feed crew pick it up and then reload as you're running down the dam to the other side.
Wow. Dude, this is
Yeah.
so gnarly. So
It's fun to watch. It's
how-
fun to watch too.
how long did it take you?
For us, you can fact check it here in a second, but our first time through, I think it was 14 hours and 50 minutes, roughly.
You did this twice?
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
I raced in what year did I race? 2010 and 2011.
Okay.
Yeah, we same partner, my buddy Mike. The first year we raced in 2010, we took rookies of the year. There's bonuses too when you for some of the payouts. So like I think we made $1,000 in winnings that year. That was crazy.
Wow.
2 punks. And then 2011, I think we finished 14th. So
Wow.
we got a lot better. And he's been doing it ever since. He still races. I follow him every year. And I think he finished 4th last year.
Wow.
He's gotten good. He's good. So it's fun to see where he goes. I'm hoping someday he wins.
So this is a whole different world. As far as like the tube goes for hydration, what did you say? It runs through your legs. So what, like you have the tube routed through your shorts and into your
No, under the seat.
Okay.
So the jug, so in the canoes, everyone has a different layout, but there's like basically like a koozie holder, right? But for like a big bottle.
Yeah.
And it's right behind your seat. And then the hose, you would run underneath your seat up. So the hose is right here. It's just, and you always keep it in your mouth. If you're smart, you'll just leave it in the corner of your mouth and you'll just blow out all that liquid to make sure it doesn't like siphon itself out after you get a drink. But you want to keep putting fluids in you. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. There's just not a chance in hell. Some of those races can be pretty warm, even at night. So you're sweating, you're losing salt.
So you're
sugar,
pinching?
You need it all.
You're pinching the tube between your teeth while breathing as well.
I would keep it in the corner of my mouth, but yeah.
Wow.
A little bit. Good cardio.
I'll say, yeah. So what kind of training does go into preparing for such a race aside from practicing on the canoe?
I ran a lot in the wintertime. We still paddled because the river doesn't freeze for the most part. It doesn't freeze over. So you can paddle all winter. There is a group of the canoers that go down to Florida every year. They call it like the spring training group. I never went. I didn't have money for that crap. So I just manned up and got on the river in the wintertime. And you paddle upriver. There's a lot of upriver paddling just to get a workout in. That's the easiest way to do it. So you don't have to worry about anybody else to stage a car or whatever. Everyone usually has a C1 with them. So just like the one-man canoe that you would train in a lot if you didn't have a partner to train with that day. And then I ran a lot. So I think I ran in the wintertime. I was running like a 10K almost like every other day.
Wow.
In the winter, first thing in the morning, 7 a.m. I'd get up and run. After that first year, like you realize the possibilities, like you just surpassed one of like your greatest limitations. As far as for me, that was like the first thing I've ever done in my life. That was one of those like, oh, that's impossible. You have to be like a professional athlete to do that. And I mean, essentially we raced in the pro circuit. After you do something like that, like the sky's the limits and you get like addicted to it and the training just takes off. You just don't want to stop because you just want to keep getting better and better. And I think that's how we just did so well that following year from all the training. just constantly being in the boat, sprints. That's huge. It's largely cardiovascular and upper body, but I never lifted weights then though. I wonder, like, what if I added strength training in? I don't know.
Yeah, because like in your more recent life, you've succeeded as a power lifter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I competed in powerlifting for that first time in my life. So this is the first time I'm, you're maxing out doing squat, bench, deadlift, things I never imagined I'd do, and did great at that. And it was completely different, a completely different sport, completely different event, no cardio, no like endurance in that. It was one rep.
Yeah.
And I don't know what was more reward. I honestly, like, the excitement of that race was probably one of the best things ever. That's like definitely one of the highlights of that. But as far as the powerlifting goes, that was, I don't know if it was just because it was a new limitation that I had reached, but it was like one of the most rewarding things. Really was.
Yeah, because seeing your Instagram videos, you were pulling some mad weight. Like, what was your deadlift?
That was 500 pounds.
Whoa.
Yeah. I'm just a little guy.
Yeah. How tall are you?
5'8".
Yeah.
5'8", and I competed at 180. So
I like that
for me, and that was just 6 months of training for
Wow.
that powerlifting.
What about your squats? Those were really impressive too.
That was 415 raw. So that's all drug free. Obviously, active duty military, can't do drugs. There's no steroids. And the competition I did was in a military category. So I did it all raw. There was no knee straps that could assist you in lifting anymore. So yeah, putting 415 pounds on your back, it just it almost puts your body in like a preservation mode. It's like this feels so unnatural. Like, what are you doing to me? Kind of thing. And I think that was almost the hardest part itself, is mentally saying like, okay, you've never done this before, but we're going to do it just this one time and just power through, like your training's going to help. You did it right. Just trust that you can do this. I think that's what probably gets a lot of people on, well, anything really, but lifting heavy weights. If you put the time in, your body will grow and adjust. But to truly hit a max, like for the first time, 90% mental, because you already have never done it. So you're just so unsure. And that's like what you're trying to battle.
Interesting.
To hit that weight.
Is it because you're saying you feel like your body's literally gonna break down under the weight?
Yeah, you feel like when you're pulling 500 pounds, your intestines are being like so squeezed out. Like there's so much pressure when you're holding a significant amount of weight. Same thing with squatting. The weight that's distributed across your back and shoulders, it feels so unnatural. Then to try and squat down and stand back up, yeah. It doesn't feel good until it's over. I'll say that.
Do you feel like woozy once that evolution's over?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's like that's like the most common thing you see. I mean, going to this powerlifting competition, I mean, these are people I've never really been around ever. And it's definitely a unique group of people. Love them. They're awesome. But yeah, you gotta see it. But yeah, just a bunch of huge people screaming, listen to metal, getting hyped up to go hit this one weight, and then you see stars after all that hype up, and a lot of people fall over afterwards. Yeah.
That you're not disqualified if you fall over, huh? Like,
not as long as you hit the weight. There's 3 judges in powerlifting, and as long as you get 2 green lights, you get that weight. A lot of times in deadlift, they'll make the lift. You're waiting for them to tell you to set it down. Once you set it down, you see stars. That's just how it goes sometimes. Some people fall over, pass out. Some people you just need to put oxygen back in your body. Wait, you're kind of almost holding your breath when you do those one lifts.
Yeah. So why are there judges? Like, it's a timing thing. Like they check the time that you're holding.
No, form. Yeah. Well, I guess time too, but it's for squat. They're making sure that you hit 90 degrees. right? So if you don't go down far enough, you're not going to get at least 2 green lights. So they have 3 judges. So one judge might think you hit 90, one judge might think you didn't hit 90. So that's what they're looking for there on the squat. The bench press is way different. It's not where you go to a gym and you just bounce weight off your chest. You actually have to listen to the commands. They'll say lift, and then you'll go down, and you have to pause. So bench pressing in a powerlifting competition is extremely hard because you have to pause at the bottom. You have to wait for them to say, then lift back up, and then you can't just throw it in the rack. You have to wait for them to give you the sign to rack the weight. They'll say rack it. So the judges are looking for all those as well. And then the deadlift, they're making sure you're not dragging it up your legs. So when it gets super heavy, you can kind of throw that bar up on your thighs and kind of like drag it and bounce the weight up. It has to be a clean one pull lift.
Okay. All right. It sounds like pretty easy judging. It's not like a dive, but it's still.
No, it's not bad at all. You're either gonna pull the weight or you're not.
Yeah.
Most people they'll just drop it early, and judging at that point's easy.
Yeah.
Just get red lights.
You say like you're shorter, so does that make things actually harder?
I would say for lifting, I would say it's better.
Yeah, right, because it's less less distance to travel. Right?
I'm a stocky guy to begin with, so I kind of have like the build of more of a weightlifter. I just never got into it until later on. I'm not a runner by any means, but I gave that a try as well anyways. A year after the powerlifting competition, I ran an ultra marathon.
Wow.
So that was way different. Way different.
What keeps you going as far as like achieving all these athletic feats, and same for rescue swimmer school? Like why do you go down these paths?
The adventure for sure, I think. And it's boring, man. If you're just doing nothing in life, I mean, I get it, you have hobbies or whatever, but if you're just going to work every day or going to school every day, you go on one vacation a year, that's not really much, there's no adventure in that. So I think all these like little avenues, I mean, it's just a competition, it's a sporting event, but I don't really see it as like that. I don't see it as like that sporting event. I see it more as an adventure and just something new. Like that, I haven't powerlifted in a competition again since then, but I ran an ultra marathon. And I haven't like done it multiple times, but I want to do more of those kinds of things. I guess I don't really like one and done, but because I want to keep trying everything. I still want to run 100 miles. That ultra marathon I did was only 50. I still have to go do 100 miles. I kind of want to do maybe an Ironman someday. I've never done that. There's just too many cool things to do out there for that little adventure. And I think the feeling that you get, because I mean, you've worked out, you've graduated swimmer school. I mean, what did that feel like? The excitement that you get from that. I just feel like it builds and leads into the next thing that you do.
Yeah.
And as long as you keep going and you keep looking for that new challenge, you'll never be bored. So that's kind of what it comes down to.
Well, that was a weird thing. I totally agree with you on most of what you're saying. And like, I think regardless of your big achievement, you should never like sit on that and keep, what's the next thing basically. Right. But as far as the swimmer thing goes, I don't recall that being like a big hooray moment because of all like the fallouts of like the good crew. Like to me, like all my good friends and like the people that made swimmer school what it is, that definitely took away. Honestly, it was kind of more of a sad day for me. I was like, this sucks. Like, fuck this.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah,
I could see that. And it's your job too. So it's not like this outside like event that you're training for. You're like, well, I got to make it through this so I can have this job,
Yeah.
So and the bond too there that we had, that was a letdown.
Yeah, it was definitely a letdown. I mean, like Josh, like such a fun guy. Eric, who was like just like in the Guardian, like the three-peat, so third person going through. It was definitely like that was the group dynamics that it was. And then it ended up being like the other 5. And I was like, ugh. And then on top of that, they tell you where you're going, which I would have assumed there would be one West Coast situation. And like it was all like, it's all the East, and you're like, yeah. But I do agree, like setting yourself those, I forget what they call it, like when you set yourself a goal, it's got to be a SMART goal. You ever hear that breakdown? It's got to be.
What does that stand? What's the acronym stand for?
Oh man, I can't give you every letter.
Smart, reasonable, attainable, measurable,
timely, as far as like you set yourself
timely. Yes, that's it. That's it. We just nailed it.
Well, what's the S you said?
I thought. Well, I thought it was simple, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm off on that.
I forget. Yeah, but anyway, that's definitely something like to always consider. It's like, and it should always be kind of a goal that you're like, I don't think it's possible. Like for example, I did a really hard rock climb, like a 13B, like a year ago or something, and it was one of those things where it was like my climbing partner who wanted to go way out in these mountains in New Hampshire. Like it's like
was it trad or you sport climbing?
Trad, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
And he takes me to this thing like way up in the mountains in New Hampshire. It's like a brutal hike. You got to hack through the woods. And I was like, what is this? Why are we doing this? Like, this is way above my pay grade. And it's a nightmare to get to on top of the hour drive. We hop on this thing. And I was like, I thought we'd just have a session of trying something really hard. And it turned into like the first session was that I was like, okay, well, this isn't possible for me anytime soon. Like it's going to take years. That was interesting to see, right? Because basically we just put up all this equipment, like this trad gear, and we weren't really climbing with our bodies much. We were just kind of sitting on the rope and just kept working it up. Like it becomes an aid route, right? Like it doesn't become free climbing anymore. And just trying 1 or 2 moves on the easiest parts, and then you're like, there's no way I could even do the hardest moves, let alone do them consecutively to get from start to finish. And then somehow I guess he convinced me to go back a second time. And the second time was more or less just as worse as the first, but you make those micro improvements. And then it takes a while. I think it took us like 3 or 4 sessions before it was like, maybe I can do the hardest part of this climb. Again, there's no way I can combine it, but maybe I can do the hardest part. And then, a lot more sessions. And eventually you're like, this just became possible. And that's when things get like really interesting. And you get that rush of like, all right, let's do this thing. And then it becomes like, let's ramp up the training. And you like start training specifically for that climb or that achievement, just like you said you were doing for like powerlifting and whatnot. Like one of the moves on this climb was to pull really hard with your arm to stretch out and reach something very far. So I would go to the gym and pull like a cable, and just pull like that. And I remember telling my friend, who was a much better climber than me, I was like, dude, I'm training in the gym on my pole. And he goes like, that's when he knew it was real. It was like, oh shit, this guy's training for real. Like he might get the climb before I do. Cause I did good on one of the sessions and he was not. So it became that competition of like, oh, who's going to get it first, right? Like who's going to achieve this thing first. So yeah, but
even though like for that moment, you were like, we're kind of like competing, against your friend. In the end, like, I think your biggest competitor is you. You're really competing against yourself. You're just trying to find out your limits, and that there really is none, but you're attaining what you haven't attained yet. And then once you hit that spot, you're like, well, I got to go to the next one because somebody else has done it. Why can't I?
True. Well, at that climb, only one person had done it. And it was one of those people that usually sandbags it, as they say. Like they say it's easier than it is.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
But honestly, in the end, though, like after you've done something, it's easy to say that. Even any like the powerlifting thing, the race, I was like, it was nothing. Like you would probably say this, I don't know if you'd say the same thing about summer school, but it'd be like, it wasn't that bad.
I do say that. That's true. That's
exactly.
I guess that's a human instinct. Like, once you achieve something very
buildup that I had in my own mind of it, and all the rumors that you hear and what everyone talks about. And then after you go through it yourself, you're like, wow, all right, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I've mentioned multiple times on the Rescue Swimmer Mindset podcast that for me, the airman program was harder than the rescue swimmer school because, and just talking about it now makes me realize maybe it was because I underestimated it potentially. Like there was some brutal days where I remember we had like the same rescue swimmer that I was like working under as like one of my trainers. And yeah, we went on some sprints, some like a long run and sprints. And then I had to do like a circuit of legs, in like a CrossFit type style, like sleds and like weights and squats and jump squats and like lunges and stuff across the airstrips with like carrying sandbags and stuff. And I remember like going towards the finish line of this circuit. And this is like one of my first days in my airman program. I was like, I don't think I can make this, like do this. And he goes like, this is what every day is going to be like in swimmer school.
Oh God.
Like I really came close that day to like, first week or something being like, okay, I don't think this is for me. I don't think I could do it. And and then it came time for swimmer school, but I built it up so much in my head that every time like there was the fear of the next day, like, dude, what's going to come? Now they're going to finally ramp it up. Cause I would always think back to that day and I would be like, now's the day where like from here on out, it's going to be the hardest day of my life. And it never really came because I think I built it up too much. Right. There's probably some benefit in thinking something up a little bit too much.
Oh no. I mean, everyone's so unique in the way they look at things. So the way you looked at it was probably completely different from the way I looked at it or anybody else there looked at it.
That's true.
But that might have helped you.
For
sure.
Yeah. I was definitely always one of those ones that would be like, I don't know that I'll make it. Like I think a lot of folks were like, I know I'm going to make it. And I was like, 50-50,
Yeah. I feel like I wanted to have that mentality. That's what I always had. And I think maybe when I was there later on, it was like a question. It was like, I mean, I didn't make it, but while I was there, it was like, well, I mean, I'm never going to quit. I'm planning on making it, but some of those days you're like, well, I'm still here. I might not be tomorrow, but we'll see where this goes.
Yeah. And there's definitely that thing once you get through like the weeding out process of helicopter rescue swimmer school, you're with a group of people that have that same mentality of, well, I'll definitely not quit. As in, I'm never going to pop on an evolution. I'll pass out before I resurface, even if I'm drowning, and I'm not going to pinch an instructor.
Right. Yep.
So pinching is like, that situation where you're combating a survivor in the water and like, you want to time out and stop this thing, like this torture.
Yeah. You need a break.
Yeah.
You want to breathe.
Yeah. You want to breathe. But like, as you make it through like that weed out week, usually there's not folks that are either going to pop or pinch.
Yeah.
So it's going to come down to the tests. But one thing I wanted to like bring up that you made me think about with that climb is like, you ever have that imposter syndrome like when you're performing these tasks, when you know you're about to make it, just near the end, you're like, maybe I don't deserve it. And you almost want to let yourself fail.
I call that like the finish line fatigue. It's like you see the finish line and then all of a sudden you're like, sometimes I could work myself up almost like a hyperventilation type thing where like everything's smooth, but all of a sudden something chemically changes. Like when you see it, cause like you said, you're going to finish, but it's like, you almost retract or something or regret. I don't know why, or if it's just excitement, maybe, I don't know.
What do you mean you retract?
The progress or your current like feeling of state. Like when I ran that ultra marathon, at the end, I mean, I was pretty much just crawling to get to the damn finish line, man. I was in so much pain. It was by far the hardest thing I've ever done. Like way harder than powerlifting, the military training, the canoe marathon. It was miserable. I'm not a runner. But we had 1 mile left because I ran with one of my buddies, Ross. And it was like, we knew we were going to finish at that point. I mean, we only had 1 mile to go no matter what it took, but it was like a part of you towards the end. It was almost harder to breathe because if it was just the excitement was overwhelming or what. So like this whole positive feeling that I had, I feel like I started to retract it the closer I got to the finish line when I already knew that, the finish was in the bags. And I think that was just because of the emotions or excitement that caused me to just start breathing differently or what. But I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
So is that what you're saying? Like, you think your physical actually breaks down because you're changing your rhythm and your technique, and like you're not as efficient? You think that's why that's occurring?
I think it's emotions, but yeah.
What do you mean
like
emotions?
That. Like when you know, like, okay, I'm about to finish, and then you just start to like lose it preemptively, I guess. I don't know.
Well, you ever notice that when you're doing like push-ups, right? Like in swimmer school, for example, at the time it was 50 push-ups. Is that still what it is? Like the requirement, you got to do 50 push-ups?
I think it's 40.
Okay, whatever. 40,
Yeah.
right? But even if it's 40, I feel like every time you do push-ups, if you shoot for that minimum that you're trying to strive for, that like last 3 or whatever feel hard. But if you're shooting, like if the test is 40, but you mentally shoot, you're like, oh, pretend in your head, in your mind, that the test is 70. That's what you're shooting for. Hitting the 40 is like fine. Same thing for like, say you bench press and then you do some push-ups after to get that burn, right? Say you just shoot for 10. At 8, it's like, I'm not going to make 10. But say you shoot for 30, you'll probably make that 10 pretty easily, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe like looking past the finish line is like something people should keep in mind. I don't know.
That I don't know. I've never thought about it that way. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Definitely a good idea. I think people are trying to just look at the finish line as my collapsing point. Like, okay, I can just roll over now.
Yeah.
Maybe, look past the finish line. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
I like it.
But as far as the intruder syndrome that I'm talking about, like for example, in that hard climb, that 13B, it was, I would say, like near the end. Don't get me wrong, that the end part of the climb for me was a very hard part. Not for my partner, but for me it was. And it was like, I know I can probably do it, but I was like, do I deserve to be a 13B climber? Not deserve, but do I have the right to be a 13B climber? Like, do I have the right to get into those ranks? Like, is that who I am? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I totally understand that, especially with that canoe marathon. Because we were rookies, and that first year we got, I think, 27th or 28th place. The point is, though, we beat a lot of people who have been paddling for 10, 12, 15 years. And it's almost like as you're coming up to the finish line, like, did we actually earn this? Like, did we do this right? Like, are we allowed to do this? Yeah, I totally get that.
You think this is a good mindset to have or a bad one? Like, and how do you overcome it?
I don't know. Is that I feel like is that like a humbling kind of mentality, or is that not the same thing? I don't know.
Probably.
Am I looking at that right?
I suppose if like you know you have the right, then maybe you're cocky.
Yeah, actually, yeah. But at the same time, it's like, well, you're the one that put in all the hours. Like, so what? This person's been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years or whatever. They're just not good. And maybe they just don't put the time in that you did. So you earned it and deserve it. But I guess you can still be humble in your feet. You don't have to be cocky.
Yeah.
But whether or not it's a healthy mindset to have, I don't know. I don't know. And almost to me would be like, maybe it's not, because you're questioning your abilities. I don't know.
As in, like, yeah, you feel like you don't deserve it. Therefore.
Yeah.
I don't know. We need to have a philosopher on and discuss this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to things like that, I just try not to overthink that.
Yeah.
It's like, hey.
Well, I've heard this from a lot of athletes, but that said, like other athletes, like for example, Alex Honnold, that climber that does free soloing.
Yeah.
I don't think he has that thought as far as, oh, I don't deserve this or whatever. I think he's like, yeah, I worked hard on it. I'm very good at what I do. And like, I nailed it. I fucking nailed it.
Confidence.
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously you have to have that. I mean, that's why those people are the best, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe that is a weakness then, questioning whether or not you deserve something. Like when you put all this time in,
Yeah.
maybe you should have the confidence and like, yeah, I am going to do this and I did deserve it and earn it.
Yeah.
But I guess you don't need to be cocky in the end.
But it's interesting, like reading this guy's book, this free soloist that climbs without a rope. Yeah, he is kind of cocky. Like he'll climb with other people, and I guess like they're super struggling on the same route. He's like soloing, and he goes like, "Really, this is a problem for you? Like this? Like come on, like what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? What kind of Gumby are you?" And I don't know.
And it's hard to argue with him because he's the best.
Yeah,
you know?
he kind of looks at you with disdain if like you're not operating, not necessarily at his level, but at least not at his minimal standard. You know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that pushes him in a good place. Probably does, because I feel like if you're climbing without a rope where your life is literally off your fingertips, then you better be cocky. You better know that you are the shit and have it dialed, and you got to talk yourself up. You know.
I don't know. I would almost say if it works for you, then do it. If like you got to talk yourself up, you got to be cocky to accomplish it, then by all means do it. Because if that's what makes you the best, that's what you have to apply. But I think maybe just that, like the people who are humble is just maybe on the outside, the people who view them, maybe it's just a more respected mindset. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's right or wrong. I would just say it's whatever works for you is what's best for you. So for Alex Honnold, be cocky. I mean, the stuff he does, he's literally the best. And if that's what works for him, I would say do it.
I've personally definitely struggled with the coming off as cocky guy. Like you just mentioned it in the start of the podcast, right? In summer school. I think that's definitely something I exude and something I try to work on. But the reality of what goes on in my mind is the complete opposite. I'm usually very wishy-washy in my mind. I'm like, I don't know. There's a good chance I won't make it. You
say that too. And it's just like, really? What? But yeah, you've always said that from the time I've known you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe I think it's probably a defense mechanism in my own life as far as like it. You remember that whole quote in summer school? It was almost like our motto was "Look strong, be strong," right? So
yeah.
In my mind, I was always questioning like, do I deserve this? Can I make it? Probably not. Everyone else fails. Why me? But the second I would kick in a door to go out to these combative survivor tests or whatever, yeah, I was a pit bull. I was like eyeing the instructors like, I'm gonna fuck you guys up. like I own the place, right?
I mean, yeah, you kind of have to have that though.
Yeah,
there's got to be times in life where you got to be completely aggressive and turned on.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not all the time. That's selective.
Yeah, but then that's when my swagger comes out, like chest up, super cocky, because like, it's probably just trying to conceal the fear, and it comes out as anger or just cockiness,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But like on the other hand, you and like a lot of others were confident in their abilities, like I'm gonna make it, but then you don't appear as cocky. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like it's polar opposites.
Yeah. I think though you would probably do better off in those moments when you're more aggressive and cocky.
But it pisses people off and people hate it.
Yeah, I guess, that's something that and honestly, I would say get over it because that's where the difference is from success and not succeeding, I would say.
You mean get over people judging the cockiness?
Yeah. It was kind of weird. I mean, do you ever remember like you're always comparing yourself to all the other candidates there? Like what's this person gonna do? Or what did they do?
Or to successful people?
Just any successful person in general. Like how did this person train? Like or a rock climber, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that one thing as far as like training goes. You visualize yourself as somebody like the top athlete in that domain. So like, I don't know what it is in powerlifting, but like, for example, in rock climbing, I think one of the best climbers is like @AdamAndra or something. Like sometimes you'll visualize, you're like, as you're about to start a climb that looks really hard, you're just like, I am @AdamAndra. like this, I am that person. Right. So you put yourself in that successful person's mindset. But as far as comparing yourself, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't say that would happen. Does that happen with you?
Because I see it a lot in the guys I work with. They're always comparing themselves to like, oh, like, well, he can do 80 push-ups, but I can only do 70. You know, is he more capable than me? Yeah, I just think that that's unhealthy. That's
Why?
unhealthy to compare to, because you're already showing signs of mental weakness. You know, you should just once you focus only on yourself, it just, I think it limits your risk of having those like mental weak points. If you're just focused on yourself, you turn off all those like external stimulus. I just think you have a higher chance of being successful.
But how would you do that if somebody next to you is crushing out the push-ups and you're struggling doing your 30 or something, you know?
I guess that's like a poor example. I would say the people that are swimmers, you know, that go to rescue swimmer school, and then you're a non-swimmer and you're significantly slower. And then you probably notice like once people put gear on, you kind of balances out. And that's kind of the more aspect I'm talking about. It's like, okay, you're more capable in this area, but that's not the only area in this event that we're being tested on. It's accumulation of everything.
Yeah. So how do you try to coach these students on that mindset?
I try and tell them not to worry about, don't think about or worry about what he's doing. Worry about your training. Because if you're worried about them doing more push-ups than you, clearly you suck at doing these push-ups and you need more work. But worrying about, you know, watching somebody else do more than you isn't going to help you do more. So I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, is if you lose that mentality of what is everybody else doing? How are you training? What are you doing? Focus just on your own training, and you're going to be doing the same amount of push-ups as them in no time.
But you should still learn from it, people's successes, right? Like shouldn't you look at that person doing 80 push-ups and be like, try to learn as to how they've achieved that?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the problem is they're looking at them more of as a competitor. In school, I'm competing with all these guys around me, but in reality, you're not. It's not like a team that graduates. It's a single individual graduation.
Yeah.
It's a solo event. I mean, you got to do this on your own.
Well, I guess I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it as a team. And like, I'd say a big part of me not quitting, because I think I've talked about this, like personally, I thought of quitting not only every day, but like after every evolution. Like I was like, every time they would tell us a drill, like sprint down, underwater, back, I would be like, fuck this. I don't fuck that, dude. I'm done. I'm out. And then everyone else was standing in line ready to go. And I would like, you know, kind of glance, and I was like, oh, these fucking guys are still there. And I'm like, to me, it was a team. I won't quit because they won't quit. Like I won't quit on them because they don't quit on me. And like underwater, when you're in pain, you look at each other. And I was like, I know you're probably in pain. I can't see it through your goggles underwater. I can't see like the fact that you want to die as much as me. But to me, it was like, I'm not going to quit because he's not quitting, you know, and like, it's going to be easier to get through this as a team than that solo candidate, as though they would be pretty badass to graduate like alone in swimmer school, which happens. Like the lone graduate, that's your ego, a big ego boost. But to me, that was never the objective. It was always like, I would look to you guys and be like, okay, they're doing it. They're surviving. I guess I won't quit, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I failed out, the chief at the time at that school, because we met with them before we left, I said basically the same thing you said, just because we were all friends. We were just such a tight little group of guys. It was like our own little family. And he basically told me, that's the worst way to look at it. He said, you guys don't take these tests together. This is completely individual, and you have to do this for only you. He's like, you can't do this for your mom or dad or your friends. Like, he's like, it's not going to work if that's your mentality. I think there's right, and I think there's no right answer to it. I think the way you looked at it or the way someone else looks at it, it's what works for you the best. But in the end too, it is up to you in the end, just you.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I feel like I had truthfully a potentially poisonous mindset, because again, I thought of quitting after every evolution, which would
Yeah.
turn into like so sprint down, underwater, back. I'd be like, all right, I'll quit after this. Like, this is gonna be terrible. I'll just quit after this. And then I'd be like back in line after that drill, and I was like, well, it's kind of awkward. I finished the hard thing now. Let's just see what's next, right? And then they'd be like something, right? Like Buddy Brick or something. And I would be like, oh, fuck that, right? But then time, like the evolution was starting. I'm like, I'll just start and quit halfway through because that's like when I should do it. But then it would end. And then I'd be like, all right, I'll just quit after the next thing. And then like the day would go by and I was like, well, it's awkward to quit at the end of the day. I'll just quit first thing tomorrow morning. And then the morning would come and you'd be like, oh, let's just see what's in store. I'll quit this afternoon. And then like the day would go by and then a month would go by. And then, you know, you're like about to do the final one and you're like, well, shit, like, I guess I made it this far. Let's see.
Yeah. I mean, from the outside looking in, and I'm saying we're analyzing each other while you're there, because in the end, I mean, you're just focused on yourself. If somebody quits to the right or left, I really wouldn't have given a shit. I'd be like, oh, see ya. You know, we're friends. Maybe we won't be friends anymore. I don't know. But you seem to make it look easy, I feel like. And you also, like you just said, you cared about all of, like, everybody there. We're all friends. I wouldn't say that's a weakness, but maybe you created, maybe it made it more mentally harder, but you definitely didn't show it. I would say you made it look easy.
Well, I think that just goes into the line of the look strong, be strong. I think I potentially was struggling as much as anyone else, but you know, when I would go out on the pool deck, and I don't know what makes you say I made it look easy, because like, you know, I was doing the same shit everyone else was doing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like especially in those big litmus tests, as far as like the, you know, combative survivor stuff, you know, I remember, I think they had me go out for the commandant that came by, the highest ranking person in the Coast Guard came out on the pool deck when we were doing like the multis, the final multis to simulate it or something. And they're like, Vince, you're going to be the guy going out, like, do good or whatever. And I'm like, all right, I'll do my best. And yeah, it was like a really hard test. I think they were making it, you know, cinematic for the Admiral or whatever.
It was a bit of a show, you know?
Yeah. And so they were really working me. And I remember just trying to look dialed in. I remember, I think like Holt threw like a kayak paddle at my head, and I just caught it, threw it. And then like my mask came off, and I would just try to like look robotic, like everything that was going wrong was supposed to happen and it was fine.
Yeah. It was like, this is normal. This is exactly what I had planned.
Yeah. My mask fell off at one point, and I just grabbed it, and I think in like one motion, I just put it back on. And like buddy towing, right? Like, so towing a survivor, you know, you're dead at this point. This is like the very hard part of the test. You're working, you're hyperventilating in your mask or whatever. You're trying to slow your heart rate down. And usually, I think at this point, my mask did fall off, right? So like, you want to breathe in and out of your mouth. But when I would face the Admiral and like, or the chiefs on the side of the pool, I would exhale through my nose, barely look like I was breaking a sweat. You know, I was just like, this is fine. And then I would do a swap and flip. So I was facing the other side of the pool and just like be like, and then just turn back around and like look at him like, dude, what else we got? Like, what else is on the agenda?
Yeah.
So again, that look strong, be strong is a key asset to anything, or at least in those elite military drills. You know?
Even when no one's looking too. I mean, even individual sports, I'm sure Alex Honnold, he goes climbing on his own and there's no one there. I'm sure he still has that same kind of mentality.
Yeah. Right on. What do you got going on as far as the military and your future goes?
Did you know my wife's pregnant?
What?
Yeah.
No way. Congratulations.
Yeah, so we're having a baby boy.
When did this happen?
Well, 20 weeks ago.
Whoa. Okay.
So yeah, I'm still planning on just finishing my enlistment out, and then we just got accepted to graduate programs for Michigan Tech University.
Whoa.
Houghton Hancock up in the Upper Peninsula.
Okay.
You know where that's
No,
so we're both going for
nobody.
I mean, it's closer to Canada.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it's on Lake Superior over there. But we're both going for graduate degrees in forestry.
Oh, hell yeah. You're trying to be like a
US, like a Forest Service technician, forest ranger.
Heck yeah. You have a degree in law enforcement too. Couldn't you be a park ranger kind of
Yeah.
thing? Or like, yeah.
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 That's what I'm trying to do.
Hell yeah.
Hopefully we can get over this COVID thing so it's not so difficult to get hired or go to school. I mean, everyone's going to school online now. It makes things very interesting. But by the time I get out, our kid will be, I think, 1.5 years old. And then we'll move to the Upper Peninsula and go to school up there.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? You can always feel free to come out.
Dude,
I don't know where you're going to be living then.
I hope in Canada here. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely need to catch up, but you're going to be busy with a little hood booger.
Due in May. Yeah.
Yeah, a mini Foguth. There you go.
I didn't know if I told you or not.
You didn't. You did not.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Took the podcast to get notified.
Excited.
That's sweet. Are you nervous?
I think I'm more excited than anything.
Hell yeah.
We both are.
This is planned.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. You got to get them in the canoe races.
That's what Nicole was asking me this morning when I showed her some of the videos on YouTube. I was like, oh yeah, like that's me, and she asked like, will you ever do this again? And I'm like, probably not. But then I was like, well, maybe if my son wants to, I would probably do it again or get him into that. It's fun, man. It's just I think it's you got to do some kind of like adventure type individual kind of race like that. It just sets the bar, and after you do something like that, it's almost like oh, there's nothing I can't do, or if there's like something that you were even questioning, you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna try it. But yeah, I think that'd be so much fun. If you wanted to get involved in the canoe marathon, I would consider maybe doing it again.
Oh, that'd be cool. I would need to train though. I would need to train here. Yeah. That'd be cool. What can you give as far as advice for folks that want to go down this canoe road, just so we can end this podcast on a outdoorsy, inspiring way?
I would go watch it. That would be my best recommendation. If you are ever in the vicinity of northern Michigan in the last weekend of July, drive to Grayling and watch the AuSable River Canoe Marathon start. If that doesn't want you or make you want to race in it, then no questions, like it's definitely not for you. But I'm sure that would do it. That alone, just watching that race, following it, maybe not. You don't even need to follow the whole thing. Watch the start and go to sleep. Wake up the next day and watch the finish. That's kind of where I started, and that's all that got me involved. I watched the race, and that was it.
Dude, it's such an underrated sport. I love it.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that because it's so true. It's way harder than I think people can imagine unless you go watch it. If you just hear it and you're like, oh, you paddle a canoe down the river. Okay, whatever. But like you said, it's so underrated and so not really talked about that people don't know. So yeah, go watch it. It was canceled this year. It's like the first time I think in history it was ever canceled because of COVID, but it's scheduled for July 2021. So I'll definitely go watch it.
Well, hats off to you folks if you made it this far through the podcast, because it's canoeing. It's like, it's not the eyebrow raising sport, but it's very epic if you've ever participated in it. And it's something that more people should definitely invest in. So Ryan, thanks for coming on.
I dig it. You got it.
I'm gonna say, if you are a fan of the podcast, go and subscribe and do the blah 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 stuff on YouTube. You can go on Apple Podcasts. You can leave a rating and a review, 5-star. Even if you hated Ryan and myself, just leave 5 stars and say how amazing Ryan's hat and face looks, and congratulating for him being a kid or being a dad now. So again, rating, review on Apple Podcasts. Follow on YouTube, subscribe, do the good shit. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Hell yeah.